This weekend, we celebrate the 14th Sunday of Ordinary Time. So we are continuing in the same liturgical season. We will see Father and the deacons and the altar in green for Ordinary Time. Now, our three readings today have the theme of meekness, how we are called to act ourselves, and how we're called to treat our neighbor, which is another lesson in discipleship, which is what we're doing in Ordinary Time over the summer. So our first reading from the prophet Zechariah, some things that you hear in that reading are going to sound very familiar. Even though this prophesying was happening with Zechariah in 520 BC, so 520 years before the birth of Christ, Zechariah talks about a king who is meek and who will come in to his kingdom riding on a donkey. Do you know any other kings who may have ridden into a city riding on a donkey? Think about that and discuss that with your family. The second reading is St. Paul's letter to the Romans. And St. Paul is reminding them that we as Christians have the Spirit of God living inside of us. Just think about that for a minute. The Spirit of God is living inside of us. If that's the case, how am I called to treat myself, and how am I called to treat my neighbor? So maybe take some time and pause and talk about that as a family today. Do you remember when you're talking to your parents or your siblings that God is inside of them? Sometimes maybe when you get frustrated or upset at yourself, do you remember that God is inside of you? The third reading, Jesus is teaching his disciples, and he is telling them to come to him when they feel labored or burdened. When they just feel like things are too hard, Jesus is saying, come to me. I want to help you. And the imagery that he uses comes from farming. And most of us these days aren't farmers anymore, but he talks about a yoke. So farmers oftentimes would yoke two animals together like oxen or horses. And it would be this wooden yoke like this that would attach the two animals together, who would then pull the plow, who would then do the work in the field together. What a beautiful image Jesus is giving us today. He says, when you're feeling labored, when you think things are too hard, put on my yoke. So Jesus is saying, I will yoke myself to you. So you're kind of like, you'd have a little attachment. It'd be you and Jesus working together through all of your labors, through all of your trials, whatever it is that you're going through. So I think that the readings today are reminding us of something really great, some good news. We're never alone. The Spirit of God is always inside of us, and Jesus wants to be with us, especially when things are hard. And we're reminded also the word meek comes up in the first reading and in the third reading, telling us that Jesus isn't the kind of king who's all about power and fame and success. He's the type of king that's all about service and love and caring for his neighbor. So how can we this week, with whatever challenges that we're going through, how can we remember that God is with us? How can we invite God into our labors and into things that are hard for us? And how can we try every day to remember that God is inside of us and God is inside of our neighbor? Blessed time.